Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. We are from group 14 and on this occasion we want to present about the translation history in Indonesia. So, the content of this material consists of first, introduction, second, translation period in Indonesia, which divided into 3 periods of time, and the last is conclusion. And for the first material will be delivered by Mbak Ria.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, I'm Ria Triastika Wiarsoputri. My student number is 1780. Here I want to explain about the history of translation in Indonesia. Period of 9th century. A number of old Malay inscriptions from Sriwijaya were found on the southeast coast of Sumatra Island. This shows that the Malay language spread to various places in the archipelago from this area, which was strategic for shipping and trade. The term Malay, or the term for its territory as Malaya itself, comes from the Malay Kingdom, which is located in the upper reaches of Batanghari. The Sriwijaya Kingdom from the 7th century is known to use Malay as the ancient Malay language, as the language of the state. 5 ancient inscriptions found in the southern part of Sumatra, the remains of the kingdom, use Malay, which is studied with both words from Sanskrit, an Indo-European language from the Indo-Iranian branch. The range of use this language is known to be quite wide because documents from the following century were also found on the island of Java and the island of Luzon. Words such as ancient wife, king, son, had, made, and glass date to the period of the 15th century. During its development, the term Malay then expanded its meaning so that the term Melayu archipelago emerged to name the archipelago. So the next presentation will be continued by my friend.
My name is Rofi Kusumadewi. My student number is 1844. Okay, so on this slide I'm going to give the explanation about what happened during the 16th century related to the translation activities in Indonesia. Okay, so in around this century, the translation of old written works from foreign languages into local languages had occurred in several regions in Indonesia. Okay, the first is in Bali. The sacred literature in Bali was found in various documents from the early of 19th century. It mainly consists of old Javanese texts which compiled in Java during the maritime era. These literary documents are the prose translation versions of several chapters of the Indian Mahabharata, and a number of Kakawin include the Ramayana Kakawin, which is actually a translation of Indian Bhatikavya that has 2 additional stanzas. There are other meaningful texts called Nitisara, which contains of political things, and it consists of 9 pieces. And it also thought to be composed by Niratra. And then there are a variety poems that composed in Bali at the Puri of Balinese rulers in the 16th century, and they are Batu Renggong, which is estimated written in 1550, and Dalam Bekung, which is thought to be written in 1580. The next is in Sumatra. The art of writing entered this island through Malay kingdoms in the 7th to 14th centuries, which were oriented to India. The oldest inscription itself written in Pallava and in Sanskrit. But then in the second half of the 8th century, the Pallava Indian writing replaced by a typical Indonesian writing type called Kawi. The stone inscription in Old Malay and Kawi writings can be found in various places throughout the Sumatra Island, especially in the south and in the central parts. This phenomenon shows that pre-Islamic Indian type writings once used throughout Sumatra on a large scale. And then, by the 14th century, Kawi's writing had begun to diverge, and this type of writing appeared in the Majapahit kingdom, in the kingdom of Pajajaran, and also in the kingdom of King Minangkabau Adityawarman. The process of Islamization itself had been very slow, starting in the 12th century. And according to Islamic tradition, religious texts must be written in Arabic script, so that this resulted in the Arabic script that gradually replacing the writings of Indian origin. And for the first evidence of the use of Arabic script for a local language in the archipelago is in the Batu Terengganu, which written 702 Hijriah on it. Okay, the last region is Sulawesi, especially in Makassar. So the migration of the Malay people in the 16th century had a big impact on many people, especially the people of Makassar. One of the Malays, named Enjamin, who worked as a royal clerk in 1670, composed an epic poem entitled Syair Perang Makassar. The Syair tells about the struggle and defeat of Goa and its king in the war against the VOC and its allies, which is, in this case, is the Bugis kingdom. And based on the surviving manuscript, the people of Makassar seem to be very interested in heroic stories that exist in the form of Malay Syair and saga. There are also various translations of saga and Malay texts into the Makassar language, and the famous ones are Hikayat Indrapura and Hikayat Syekh Mardan. Okay, so I think that's all from me. The next material will be delivered by Donna. And for the example, this is Batu Terengganu. Batu Terengganu is a granite inscription found by an Arab tin trader and researcher, Sayyid Hussein Ibnu Ghulam al-Bukhari, in 1889. He presented the stone to Sultan Zainal Abidin I, which is at that time he was the refounder of the Terengganu Sultanate in the first half of the 18th century.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce myself. My name is Rahmadona Sifara. So in this occasion, I will discuss about the topic historical translation in Indonesia, especially in period of 20th century. The translation tradition in 20th century can be traced through the tradition of translating religious texts, technical translation, and literary translation. As with Christian and Yahudi books, the Quran, the holy book of the Islam people, was translated into European language, especially Latin. Apart from the translation of religious texts, the 20th century saw the emergence of translation profession that focus on technical work. The formation of the United Nations in 19 1918 was perhaps the trigger for the birth translation efforts, because since the government that joined the United Nations began to establish translation office for administrative purpose. Multinational rental companies have also followed the government steps by providing translation service to translate everything related to technical reports and instruction manual for the benefit of the wider community, with the tendency towards the importance of translation. Translator feel the need to establish an association as a professional organization. The French government, in collaboration with UNESCO, finally agreed to establish the Fédération Internationale de Traducteurs, or called International Federation of Translation, in 1953. FIT is an umbrella organization of translation association whose members are translation associations from various countries, including HPI or Indonesian Translator Association, representing Indonesia as its member. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, let's move to the history of translation in 21st century. Humans are facilitated in all aspects. All needs can be reached efficiently, like ordering transportation, online ordering food, and so on, with the press of a button. In various educational institutions in Indonesia, from state-run universities to private community-run universities, almost every year, workshops, seminars, and international conferences are held on translation by universities and translation associations abroad. The world of translation has entirely changed, especially in Indonesia. The challenge for translator and translation technology developer is how the translation technology does not replace the role of translator. North, 1997, argues that translation does not only transfer text from the source language to the target language, but has a purpose and message to be conveyed through culture. Okay guys, let's move to the next slide. It's about the example of literature. You know that Harry Potter novels is a series of 7 novels written by British author J.K. Rowling. These are available in Indonesian language since it had translated to Indonesia and officially republished by a well-known publisher company. Well, let's move to the conclusion. The need for knowledge that continues to develop over time. Translation activities are increasingly being carried out to increase human knowledge, which in fact that come from various languages. Its development in Indonesia itself has started a long time ago. The history of translation that occurred in Indonesia was none other than the use of the Malay language, which began to be adapted as a trading language, which eventually became increasingly widespread due to the growth of ancient kingdoms. Several translation developments occur in 3 periods, namely the 19th century, the 16th century, and the peak occurred in the 21st century, where translation activities experience very rapid development. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you for listening and enjoying our presentation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.